North Africa, 1942. A British patrol advances across the desert. They never see the German position. They never see the gun. One moment they are walking. The next moment a sound cuts through the air like a knife through fabric. Burn Burt. 5 men are down before anyone realizes what is happening. The gun that hit them looked almost crude, stamped metal, simple design, mass-produced in factories. By any conventional standard, it was the least sophisticated machine gun fielded in the war. It was also the deadliest. The MG-42 fired 1,200 rounds per minute, 20 bullets every single second, so fast that British troops thought they were facing multiple guns at once. So fast, it sounded like a continuous roar. The Germans called it the MG-42. British soldiers gave it a different name, Hitler's Buzzsaw, and that sound would haunt Allied nightmares from Normandy to Berlin. The problem facing German infantry in 1940 was simple. The Wehrmacht had conquered Poland and France with lightning speed, but victories had exposed a critical weakness. The standard squad machine gun, the MG-34, was excellent, but had one fatal flaw. It was too expensive and too slow to manufacture. The MG-34 required skilled machinists and precision equipment. Each gun took hours of careful work to produce. As German forces expanded across Europe, demand for machine guns far exceeded supply. Factories could not keep pace. Infantry squads went into battle with fewer automatic weapons than doctrine required. Wehrmacht commanders needed something that had never existed before, a machine gun as effective as the MG-34, but simple enough to mass produce, a weapon that could be stamped from sheet metal instead of machined from solid steel. The engineering challenge seemed impossible. Machine guns required precision. Stamped metal parts were crude. How could crude construction deliver reliable performance? The solution came from designer Werner Gruner. Instead of simplifying the MG-34, he started from scratch. Every component was redesigned for mass production. Complex machined parts became simple stampings. Expensive materials became cheap steel. The key innovation was a roller-locked bolt system that was mechanically simple but devastatingly effective. The result was a firing rate of 1,200 rounds per minute. The British Bren gun fired 500 rounds per minute. The American Browning fired 400 to 600. The MG-42 fired twice as fast as anything the Allies fielded. This wasn't just faster. This was a different category of weapon entirely. The high rate of fire created an unexpected tactical advantage. When you fire 20 bullets per second, precision becomes irrelevant. The MG-42 didn't need to aim at individual soldiers. It aimed at areas, doorways, windows, sections of trench. The sheer volume of fire turned spaces into kill zones. The gun weighed just 11.5 kilograms, light enough for one man to carry. The barrel could be changed in seconds when it overheated. One barrel fired until hot. Swap it for a cool barrel. Continue firing. Endless fire. Production began in 1942. Factories that had never built firearms could produce MG-42 components. A gun that took 8 hours to machine could be stamped in 90 minutes. By war's end, over 400,000 MG-42s had been manufactured. The first large-scale deployment came in North Africa in late 1942. British forces advancing against Rommel's Afrika Korps encountered the new weapon with shock. The sound was not the familiar tat-tat-tat of machine gun fire. It was a continuous buzz, a tearing sound, like ripping canvas, like a saw blade cutting metal. At Kasserine Pass in February 1943, American forces met the MG-42 for the first time. After-action reports described soldiers freezing in place when the sound started. The gun didn't sound like a weapon. It sounded like an industrial accident happening on a battlefield. British officers began briefing troops before assaults. If you hear the buzzsaw, go to ground immediately. Do not try to advance through the fire. The rate of fire is so high that there are no gaps between bullets, no space to run through. Just get down and wait. D-Day brought the MG-42 to its most famous battlefield. German defenders overlooking the Normandy beaches positioned their guns in concrete bunkers with interlocking fields of fire. When Allied landing craft dropped their ramps, the buzzsaw opened up. At Omaha Beach, MG-42 positions in the bluffs commanded the entire landing zone. American troops advancing across open sand had nowhere to hide. The guns fired in long bursts, sweeping back and forth. Everything between the tracers was filled with lead. Sergeant Warner Hamlet of the 116th Infantry Regiment later described the sound. He said it was like a zipper being pulled. Zip, zip, zip. Continuous. Unending. He watched men around him fall in groups, not one at a time like rifle fire, in clusters, because the rate of fire was so high that a single burst could hit multiple targets before the gunner could even adjust aim. Allied troops developed an almost superstitious fear of the weapon. Veterans could identify the MG-42 by sound alone from hundreds of meters away. The moment that buzz started, experienced soldiers went flat regardless of what they had been doing. The sound triggered an instant survival response. German tactics maximized this psychological impact. MG-42 teams would hold fire until Allied troops were fully committed to an advance. No warning shots, just silence until the enemy was exposed. Then the buzzsaw opened up. The sudden wall of fire created panic. In the Normandy hedgerows, the MG-42's defensive power reached its peak. German teams positioned guns at choke points with clear fields of fire down the narrow lanes. The MG-42 turned every gap in every hedgerow into a potential death trap. Lieutenant Paul Fussell, who fought through France, described walking into MG-42 fire as walking into a wall. He said you couldn't see the bullets, but you could feel them. The air itself felt solid. Men didn't run through MG-42 fire. They crawled. They waited. They called for artillery or air support, because trying to advance directly against the buzzsaw was suicide. The comparison with Allied machine guns tells the story. The British Bren gun fired 500 rounds per minute from a 30-round magazine. The American Browning fired up to 600 rounds per minute, still only half the rate of the MG-42. The Germans had created something the Allies never matched. It changed infantry tactics. Allied forces learned to never advance against an MG-42 position without overwhelming support. Artillery first, airstrikes if possible, armor if available, but never infantry alone. German tactical doctrine treated the MG-42 as the foundation of infantry firepower. The machine gun was the squad. Riflemen existed to protect the machine gun. This was the opposite of Allied doctrine. The Wehrmacht built their entire defensive strategy around MG-42 positions with interlocking fields of fire. The gun consumed ammunition at terrifying speed. A gunner could empty a 250-round belt in 12 seconds. The barrels overheated rapidly. But these limitations mattered less in defensive positions where ammunition could be stockpiled and barrel changes performed under cover. Production continued until the last days of the Third Reich. Factories produced MG-42s even, as Allied forces closed in. Over 400,000 units were manufactured, more than any other German machine gun. After the war, the MG-42 influenced machine gun design worldwide. The high rate of fire, the quick change barrel, the simple rugged construction. These features became standard. The American M60 drew heavily from MG-42 design principles. So did the Belgian FN Mag. The West German Bundeswehr adopted a modified version designated the MG3, rechambered for NATO ammunition but mechanically nearly identical. The MG3 remains in service today with over 30 countries. 80 years after its design, descendants of Hitler's Buzzsaw are still being manufactured. Veterans who faced the MG-42 never forgot the sound. Decades after the war, the buzz of a power saw or the sound of fabric tearing could trigger memories. The weapon had burned itself into collective memory. Not just as a dangerous weapon, as the dangerous weapon. The sound that meant death was coming faster than you could run. North Africa, 1942. A British patrol advances across the desert. 5 men go down in 8 seconds. The survivors never see the gun that killed their friends, but they hear it, and they never forget. The gun looked crude. Stamped metal, simple design, mass-produced. It was the least sophisticated machine gun fielded in the war. It was also the deadliest. That was German engineering. That was the MG-42. And the sound of Hitler's buzzsaw echoed across every battlefield from Kasserine to Berlin.